Hi, and thanks for watching this Finance with Excel video. In this video, this is the fourth video in the personal income tax series. In this one, we're going to go over your child tax credit. And child tax credit is a tax credit that you get for every child under 17 that you claim on your taxes. And so if you have 3 children under 17, then you get to claim then you get a child tax credit of $3,000. However, once your income reaches a certain level, the child tax credit tapers off. Now, I have the levels here for the various thresholds. So, if you're obviously if you're single, you don't have any. If you're filing single, you don't have any dependents. But if you're married joint, the threshold's $110,000, and if you're head of household, the threshold's $75,000. And then after that, your taper rate is 5 cents for every dollar. So for every dollar beyond for every dollar beyond whatever your given threshold is, your child tax credit decreases by 5 cents. So what we need to do in this video is calculate what your child tax credit is going to be. So first thing we need to know is we need to know how many dependents under 17 you have. So we're just going to pull this from your first tab with all of your inputs. And then we need to know what your taxable income is. So we need to know your taxable income. And lastly, we need to know your filing type. And so in this case, I just put married joint. So we have all the information now that we need. Notice the gray, these are things that could potentially change in the future. The taper rate, the thresholds, or the tax credit could change, and so you could just update those if those change in the future. So now your base tax credit is simply going to be your dependents under 17 multiplied by your child tax credit. So in this particular case, this person is entitled to $2,000 in a child tax credit. However, we need to know, and so this person has a taxable income of $35,000, which means that the tapering is not going to come into account in either of these thresholds. But what if the person's income was above the threshold? Well, we need to figure out what the amount of tapering is going to end up being. So first thing we're going to say is if our taxable income, so this is your income if you're filing head of house. So if your taxable income is less than your head of house threshold, then the tapering is going to be 0. Because there's going to be no deduction to what your base tax credit is. However, if your taxable income is greater than $75,000, then what we need to do is we need to compute your taxable income minus the threshold and multiply that by the taper rate, and then that will give us whatever the tapering is or whatever the amount that you get deducted for having income beyond the threshold. So in this case, obviously, we can see that the person's income is not below. So then, next thing is for married joint, we're going to do the same thing. If your income is less than the threshold, then the taper is obviously 0. If not, then we need to calculate our income minus the threshold multiplied by the taper rate. And then I forgot to close with a parentheses, that's why the thing yelled at me. So now, the next thing we need to do is we need to compute which tax credit we're going to end up having. So what we're going to end up having is we're going to say if filing type is equal to if filing type equals married joint, then our tax credit is going to end up equaling our base minus our married joint tapering. And next we're going to say if our filing type equals head of house, then it's just going to be our base tax credit minus our income tapering. And otherwise, our income is going to be equal to 0. So that means if you are filing single, then your child tax credit is going to be equal to 0. Now, there's one thing we have to do to make sure that we end up getting the appropriate number. Because if I come here and let's say I put $300,000 in here for our income, and I go to my child tax credit, well, the tapering is going to end up being too big. So in this child tax credit, then all I can change this. I'm just going to put the max of whatever this is, or 0. And if I do that, then if my income is so large that my child tax credit is equal to 0, or the tapering is larger than whatever my base credit is, my child tax credit is going to simply be equal to 0. So now we just need to come back here and we need to go to child tax credit, and I'm going to say this is going to equal to whatever is right here. So now, and then I'm going to make that $1. So now if I change this to like $65,000, we can see that our child tax credit is equal to $2,000 because this person is married, filed joint, and so $65,000 is less than the married joint threshold at which it starts to taper. And so now we know what our, and I'm going to do the decimals on that. So now we know what our child tax credit is going to be in this situation. So thanks for watching.